Hi, I'm Liz Johnson. I'm a Senior Director in External Affairs at Capital One. I'm also the Vice President of Operations for the Capital One Foundation and the National Lead for the Voices BRG. We're in for a great conversation today about what it means to create authentic partnerships with Black businesses, and to also talk about how Black businesses have been using their platforms to celebrate their communities. I'm thrilled to be joined today by the founders of Creative Theory Agency and the Broccoli City Festival.
What's up, Liz? Appreciate you. My name is Brandon McKay Hearn, one of the members of Broccoli City and the Broccoli City Festival. Don't necessarily have a title because I think that we all do a little bit of everything, you know what I mean? So yeah, that's me.
This is Marcus Allen, co-founder of Broccoli City. Super excited to be here with Capital One.
Hey Liz, thank you. I'm Gary Williams Jr., co-founder and chief creative officer of Creative Theory Agency. Excited to be on this panel and excited. I can't even talk today. It's Monday, but excited to really just dive in and talk with the Broccoli City folks. I feel like they fam, and really just again excited to be here. So thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Tamal George, co-founder and CEO of Creative Theory Agency. Again, echoing the same words as everybody who came before me. Super excited to be on here today. Broccoli City team, you know, it feels like we see each other and move and passing sometimes like two trains in the night. Liz, thank you so much for putting this together. Super happy to chat. Looking forward to the conversation.
Same here. I know you all have done some amazing work in the communities and excited for folks to learn more about that.
Yeah. What
inspired each of you to start your respective companies?
So when Gary and I first met, you know, it was probably late 2014, and as you know, two of the few kind of creative brothers around the city doing really cool work, elevated work, you know, we were running into each other all the time. Quickly realized that we were being brought in, you know, to do the kind of as like that garnish on an idea that had already been baked by somebody else. And you know, as you know, people of color, when you're showing up, then people would tend to think that there's like deeper conversations happening than just like, you know, the producers of the content that exists kind of as it meets the world. And so we quickly realized that we had enough skill, enough intellect to be able to start a business, start an agency, and like get into the conversations way earlier than at that like final execution stage. And basically it was just like, we need a seat at the table. We absolutely need a seat at the table, right? And from there, you know, we kind of mulled over the idea a little bit, and then right, I think it was, you know, November or October of 2015, we were like, no, we have ideas that are incredibly strong. We have a community that's even stronger. And our kind of value add is anything we do, we want to bring in our community with us, right? We know great designers, artists, you know, photographers, cinematographers, writers, etc. And it's like, these are all people we just have in our circle every single day, and we got to find more opportunities for them. So that was kind of how we started Creative Theory. And then, you know, from there, it just kind of took off.
So yeah, Liz, when I think about what inspired us to start Broccoli City, you know, it is often about what works for us. Like you usually create things from a perspective of your community, right? So when we started off with T-shirts, it was, oh, let's do some positive T-shirts because we felt like people in our community need to see some dope, positive, you know what I mean? Have some dope, positive apparel. When it came to the festival, it was, man, at that time, it was, man, there are no spaces for us to really do our thing or for our artists to perform. Festivals obviously are a big, big thing now, but when we started ours in 2010, it wasn't really, you know what I mean? Nobody really doing big hip hop festivals. It was around the blog era, you know what I mean? So we had the likes of the Dom Kennedys of the world, the Kendrick Lamars, you know what I mean? And his name was low on the list at that time, you know what I mean? So it was just about creating those safe spaces. And everybody uses safe spaces now, right? They use that word all the time. But at the time, it really was about creating a space for us to kind of let our hair down. No pun intended, but yeah.
Oh, fantastic. And you all have been working, in this space for a few years now. So as you think about your partnerships and your interactions together, can you talk a little bit about that and how you kind of seen some similarities and intersections with each other?
In terms of creative theory in Broccoli City.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, the funny thing about it is, I think Ashley works at Creative Theory. Am I correct on that,
Sure
T and
does.
G?
Yeah, she does.
And what's so funny, going back to just the community, and I think Timon had hit on it, just in terms of having so many creatives in your mix that y'all just end up working with each other. And I think he used the word show up, which I love, because a lot of us do talk. Me and Marcus like to call them time pest, because they'll talk your ear off, but who is actually showing up? And I just like that he said that, because we know Ashley from when we used to do, well, not used to, but we did a 5K run. We used to do 5K runs before every festival. And Ashley would be there early in the morning, getting it in, helping me and Marcus with everything. I mean, and she was a beast, and we've always respected each other. She's been at all of our festivals, and just that community, right? That DC community, that Black community. We just support each other. And I think that it's just a blessing. And yet again, going back to what T said, when we all show up.
Yeah, no, I mean, he nailed it. I think Taman and I always talk about one, showing up, but also like there's a sector of creatives who, and I don't want to sound like negative, but there's a sector of creatives who have a hard time converting that creativity into like business acumen, right? And really making that transitions, right? It's great that you're creative, but can you turn that creativity into an actual business model, and can you make it sustainable, right? So I think everybody has ideas, right? Everybody's creative in their certain aspect, but when it comes down to actually showing up and actually executing those ideas, that's where you separate the cream and the crop, right? And that's where you separate those those creatives from, just people who are ideal folks, but then people who can really turn those ideas into execution. I think that's what Broccoli City and that's what Creative Theory has kind of found in our community. Those creatives who not only have ideas, but are willing to do the work and show up on many different levels to get the job done, right? And so again, I know at Creative Theory, we look for doers. We look for folks who are ambitious. We look for folks who are self-starters. We look for folks who don't need to necessarily be told what to do, but are asking what more can they do? How can they help? And those are the people that you really can build with, even if they're not extremely talented. If you just have a spirit of like doing, I want to do, I'm proactive, how can I help? That will get you a long way. And so again, I think the way we think about business and creativity is similar from what I've seen from a distance.
Yeah, and even to add to that too, from the business constructs, I think are similar too. But when we talk about like our partnership models and who we decide to partner with, and also who we say no to partner with as well, I think Broccoli City Creative Theory, we've always been on that same level of that kind of nod, right? Like we see what y'all are doing, and they probably see what we're doing, and it's like, yeah, that's how you do a partnership that feels right. That's how you introduce a brand to your community without having to lose any bit of yourself, right? And I think we're all really intentional about, if somebody wants to show up next to us and us vouch for them, they really better be doing something special, right? And over the years, you just kind of get good at identifying, which companies, which partnerships are worth even having that conversation, and who's going to really be there and support the mission, the mission and vision of your company, but also like the spirit of what you're trying to do in the community.
And so as we kind of think about, the barriers, the opportunities in those safe spaces, for example, I lead one of our business resource groups, Voices, whose mission is to create an environment where our Black associates are empowered to drive change, to break barriers, and to make an impact for Capital One. So as you're thinking about the business environment, what are some of the biggest barriers that Black businesses are facing right now?
I'll jump in on that. Man, I think right now it's an interesting time. I think I think it's two parts, right? I think it's an interesting, it's a challenging time, but it's also a blessed time for Black businesses. I think on the negative side, I think one of the things that is probably one of the most concerning things to me in Black businesses, obviously you can talk about capitalization, access to resources and all that stuff. And I think those are all important things. What I think is actually interesting right now is I believe that Black businesses have a resource that is so wanted right now. What my biggest concern is about Black businesses deciding who to partnership and who to share that Black value proposition with. I think that there's so much talk in corporate America, in the nonprofit impact space about standing around some Black organizations that they perceive as having their shit together, that it can be overwhelming for those companies to decide who they need to stand with. And a lot of times, in many cases, we don't have the mentorship and the guidance to know how to structure these deals and these relationships so that the brand ultimately gets value to move forward. And it's not just a thing where you do a short-term partnership with a brand, you do something and then it fizzles out. I think that the main thing about this period is about Black businesses getting the most out of this time and having a plan to do so. And so I think that having a plan and thinking through this in terms of how you want to set up relationships and how to use the resources that you have, even if it's non-monetary, because I believe the non-monetary value that Black businesses have right now is highly, highly valued. I mean, you're talking about Bitcoin type value. And so I just think that one of the biggest challenges for me because we've been there, Broccoli City has been there, going back to Gary's comment about those right kind of partnerships. I think that is one of those things where we have done those type of partnerships when our value wasn't as high. And we look back on those relationships and we say, damn, we did business with that big corporate brand, but they really just used this, right? Like they used this for a campaign release. They used this for something that was short term. And you look back on it and you like, well, we did it, but they don't even really know who we are. Like we didn't get a real press release. Only a small division of the company even saw it. So that's my biggest concern is how do we actually spread our resources out over the next year to 2 years so that the Black businesses that do these partnerships truly do get that longevity and value proposition they truly deserve.
That's a good point. I think just to piggyback off that, I think we can all look back and probably think about some partnerships that may not been the most beneficial for us, right? But I think even when we think about our journey, that's part of it, right? And that's kind of the learning you have to do to get to this point where now we know what our value is, right? Now we know what a bad deal looks like, right? But we also know what a good deal looks like and we know our value. So now when we're having these conversations with these corporate entities or these big brands, we can come to the table more proactively with, this is what we know we bring. This is what we know our value is, not necessarily, can you do this, but do you want to do this, right? And so to your point, I do believe that Black businesses are struggling with that because everybody wants us right now. Everybody wants us to co-sign their brand, co-sign their corporation. Everybody wants, that Black dollar. They want to be seen as supporters of the Black community. And so, even with us, things are coming in left and right. Can you do this? Can you do that? We love to partner. But like Taman said, it's knowing which partnerships to say no to, knowing which partnerships to say yes to, and knowing which of these corporations are really doing the work and are really, authentic in their approach to how they are servicing our community, right? And it's not just a black square. It's not just performative. And to that point, I think there's mentorship that needs to happen, with some of these smaller Black brands, and then brands like, Broccoli City and us, and helping some of these smaller Black brands understand their value in this time, right? Because it's a lot coming at once. And if you're young, just starting out, you don't necessarily know how to position yourself to where those deals make the most sense for you, right, in your community. And so you might take something that it might be a nice check, but to your point, you might be getting used, right, and it is not necessarily benefiting you on the back end. So those are things I think that we learned along our way that we need to make sure we're passing down to some of these brands that are just getting started, or Black companies that are just getting started, when we can, right? So that would be my thought.
Good point.
And so the flip on that is kind of what should the companies be thinking about before they're going out to engage and create relationships with Black businesses?
I don't know. I'll keep talking, but and I'll say something real brief. But I again, it comes back to, for us, what are you really doing that's servicing the community that you're trying to, what it is, market to, whatever your marketing objectives are. Why are you approaching us? And then what are you doing internally that's going to reflect what you need us to display externally, right? And so I think there's companies, there's corporations who are doing the work externally, but very few are doing that work internally. And what I mean by that is very few are shaking up their C-suite, with diverse hires. That's women, Black, Asian, whatever it is. Like, are you willing to do that?
Diversity officer. That's our new role,
right? Right, exactly, right. And that's cool and all. Like, give us those positions, but at the same time, when you give us those positions, now you need to make sure that you're listening to us and you're valuing what we're telling you about your internal status and situation, right? And so again, I think it's they need to make sure that they're willing to sometimes be uncomfortable with change, and that they're willing to not only do the external work but the internal work to reflect some of those marketing or business objectives that they have within our community.
And I think just to jump in really quickly too, I know one of the things that we look at when we're, when people are reaching out to us for agency work or partnerships, et cetera, to me, it always goes back to tip of the iceberg versus what's underneath the water, right? If the majority of the work is above the water, right? And by above the water, what that really means is people are, companies doing it so that it can exist on social media and be seen by a customer, instead of the majority of the work being under the water, they can't be seen. Then you immediately know that org or that vertical or that whatever is not in the right place, right? So that's kind of our stress test, is like, is the real majority of this work happening below the surface? That's how we know we feel comfortable if it's something to move forward with. And then, yes, there's this tip of the iceberg that is above the surface, which, might to some degree be, forward facing or consumer facing in the long run.
That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, I agree with what Gary said 100%, just in terms of making sure that these companies are doing that work internally. I think that's super powerful. And just going back to recognizing our value, right? When you are young, when you are, just starting off your brand, to Marcus's point, we said yeah to whatever, because we just happy that you acknowledging us. Like, oh God, you think that we're, but to your point now, things have changed and that table has switched. And I think that, I just think it's so important. To your point though, Gary, I got to keep going back. Are they doing the work internal? Are they shaking up their boardrooms? And this is not just a marketing campaign or a ploy.
Yeah, and I think for me, the initial conversation is always interesting in these situations, because it's always interesting to hear who do they have on the phone representing them on those initial calls. And you can usually always tell, like you
Marcus,
know.
Hey, Marcus, how you doing?
Like you automatically know what type of partnership this is gonna be. Obviously the initial vibes, that's one. And then I think part two is always if they actually have a plan. You get on the call and they're just like, man, we just love what you guys are doing. We just want to figure out ways to work. And it's like, okay, cool. What you got? And then they looking for you to provide ways for it to be a value proposition. And it's like, well, you Fortune 100, like you tell us, like, what are we doing? Like, how are we gonna pull this together? And so I think that, I think those initial calls and then kind of what the initial ask and the initial expectations of the partnerships, how deep have they gotten? How much time was spent before this call to prepare and plan to get value out of the relationship, rather than just saying, like, listen, from what we can tell right now, we should just be working together. In some cases, that's cool, right? Like, that's cool if that's what it is. But in most cases, that's kind of not what you want to hear.
And on that rumor mill, and y'all let me know if I'm tripping, but didn't Beyonce and her team at some point when they were at Adidas or something say, is this the team that's going to be working on my project? And then she negated to do it. And I just think, yet again, just going back to Gary's initial point, what are you guys doing internally? And then to what Marcus just said, who's on that call? Like, who is the first line of communication? I think that's very important.
Yeah, I think companies need to hear that, because they're not, there needs to be a broader understanding of what actually needs to be brought to the table in order to message to the different communities, in order to support the different communities. And so having folks on the team that either have that lived experience or can bring that feedback and that diverse lens to how products are being developed, how marketing is being developed, is so important. And it's just great to hear that you all are thinking about not just about what you're bringing to the table, but what your partners are bringing to the table as well.
Absolutely.
So I think we talked a little bit, this has been, a really unique opportunity. We've seen companies donating to Black causes. Even at Capital One, we've made an initial pledge of $10 million to support organizations advancing social justice in the Black communities. And that's on top of a $200 million commitment to support growth in underserved communities, advance socioeconomic mobility, especially by closing gaps when we're looking at equity and opportunities. Even when we think about our cafes, how are we connected in the communities, how are we partnering with nonprofits, our volunteerism, the way our associates are engaging in the community, or even just really getting to know our customers over a free cup of coffee. So I think we talked about, what is, in addition to donating money, how can large companies show up to support Black businesses and nonprofits?
I'll hop in here real quick, just in terms of what you just said about having coffee with somebody, finding a place for you guys that exchange real dialogue. I think that makes a lot of sense. And I guess, yet again, it echoes back to what Marcus said about the whole, who's on that initial call? Like, who are we communicating with that's representing your company? And I don't think that it's, if you're doing a partnership with a Black company, that it needs to be a Black person on the phone. That would be great. But, it can be somebody of another race, but do they understand the culture? Have they been to a Broccoli City festival? Do they know, you know what I mean? Like, do they do they know the culture in which they're speaking on? And I think magic happens when we're comfortable. And I don't mean let down all restraint, but if I feel like I can have a conversation with you, I feel like those are where the best ideas come from. Just a sense of camaraderie. Something happens when I'm comfortable. Even this conversation now, it seems like we're all comfortable. So the best ideas, the best things are going to come when we're comfortable, I believe. So that's my tidbit.
I think, and I love that conversation and dialogue is definitely key. And I think, Liz, to your point of, corporations and brands giving, monetary support to whether it's organizations or groups and things like that service the community. I think that's amazing, but I think there's also intellectual support that needs to happen as well. And there's an information gap, right, that our community is usually not privy to. And just to make it specific, let's talk about banking, right? There's so many things around financial literacy that our community for some reason is not privy to, right? And so, yes, I love, and one of the reasons that we partner with Capital One on the Resilience Project was because you were doing that work, behind the scenes. Again, when we talk about tip of the iceberg and then you know, the larger piece of the iceberg underneath the water, you all were doing that work, right, in the community. And so that's why it was a no-brainer for us to partner with you on the Resilience Project. But I think, you know, even with when companies do give money to organizations or that support the community, it's important that we back that up, or those companies back that up with intellectual support as well, and sharing and knowledge sharing, right? It's great to give money, but we also, you know, there's power in knowledge, right? And there's a lot that we don't know in this industry, and how to move, and specifically just, again, speaking to banking and finances, like there's a lot of information, whether you talk about investing and saving and where to put your money so it grows, you know, what to buy, when to buy. Those are things that we're not privy to. And those are things that I think, you know, a company like Capital One, and I know you all do programming within your cafes and things like that, which is amazing, but these other corporations can learn from that as well. You know, whatever industry you're in, if it's music streaming, like share that knowledge on, you know, what those streams mean, how to get the most streams, you know. Don't just dump money, you know, into organizations. Like, we need that knowledge so we can succeed like our counterparts, right? Who are privy to that knowledge often, for whatever reason that is. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was actually, it's funny just hearing that example you just gave. I mean, Brandon and I literally are kind of going through that right now. We had a relationship with a financial institution since college, right? We have been working, we're from North Carolina. We personally had a relationship with the bank. That transition, because of our comfort level, personally transitioned into our business. Obviously, our business started off slow, small, but over the years since 2013, you know, we've had, you know, probably upwards of $10 to $20 million have come through our business accounts. And we ain't holding on to a lot of that, but it went through, right? I can say that it went through there. And, you know, I'll just say this, right? Like, when the CEO of Wells Fargo made the statement about the inability to find Black students or Black employees to fill their gap. Now, mind you, I'm from North Carolina, Brandon's from North Carolina, right? So we both are from HBCUs, both graduated, and are surrounded by people who fit the bill of which these individuals are saying they can't find. So that was a tipping point for us, right? That automatically made us say, wow, well, what are we even doing? Like, why are we even business? But then it actually made us say, well, let's not just make an emotional decision based upon that one comment. Let's actually evaluate the value of this relationship that we've had over the years. And the truth be told, it was a very easy decision. We've never had a level of conversation with anybody at that bank outside of going into a branch. We've never had a deeper relationship. We've never had a personal banker. We've never had a business banker outside of a branch contacting me. We've never had a line of credit created. We've never had nothing. They treated us for since 2013, literally as if we might have been, I don't know, like a gas station. No disrespect to a local gas station, but there was zero value proposition to what we had done. And it really made our decision very easy, right? That we simply had not been getting the value. We had not been getting the education. We had not been getting access to the programs and to the resources, because there's no way we've had all these funds come across. And some of it is just us not having the education, you know, transparently, right? You just don't know what you don't know. But at the same time, had there been someone on the other side, on the business banking side, to say, hey guys, you know, y'all are cash flowing $2-3 million annually, right? Like, are you familiar with this program? Are you familiar with this line of credit? Hey, if you put some money here, we can put you in this. Or we never had that. And so I just think that if somebody like us can go through a relationship with a bank and never have any relationship with them, I can only imagine what a smaller business who has no footprint, how difficult it is to get that information. So I think to that point, you know, being able to get real valuable, the resources are one thing, but I think that education, right? That's important, because we just simply don't know. I mean, where do you even know to come up with some of these credit back situations and these lines and all this different stuff? It's just not available. You can't Google it. Somebody literally has to tell you. And if you don't get told, you get left. And so I just think that it's crazy that we're having this conversation and literally like we're in that situation right now.
And to play devil's advocate to what he just said, what can we do, right? Like us four brothers on this phone, you know what I'm saying? Like, how can we, like, I don't know. And I guess I'm posing this question to all of us, like, GT, like, do we create somewhat of I don't know, counseling sessions? You know what I mean? Like, how do we continue to put steam back into our community through what Marcus just said, through education? Because that's the light. That's key. You know what I mean? But I know another side. I know some folks may say, don't think that institution is going to give you the knowledge. How do you go out and get the knowledge for yourself, right? So with us being in the position that we're in, and yet again, I'm talking to Creative Theory and Broccoli City, how do we get this information to our counterparts? To the Gary that's up the street from you right now, who is about to start something new, to the young Marcus, to the young T, to the young Brandon, so then they won't have to go through what we went through, Marcus, right?
I think it's the answer is right is through partnerships like the Capital One situation. Because what I particularly don't like to do, going back to earlier, let's be doers. So don't talk me to death about what's out there. Walk me to the door and show me where the application is, and actually don't leave while I'm filling out the application because I'm gonna have questions. So like, so like at the end of the day, like, I think it is through the partnerships like what we're talking about with Capital One. Like, let's hold each other's hand and let's walk in and say, hey, listen, we got a whole thing that we can provide value that's past just saying, hey, if you go down the street, there's some resources on the block, but I don't even know like which block is it? Like where is it at exactly? And so I think we just need to be mindful that, let's go into it with education, but let's go make sure we got some next steps, some resources that people can put their hands on now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the benefits of our cafe structure is that you can actually go in and sit down with a representative, and it's not that kind of stuffy, oh, I'm looking at you in your suit and tie across a desk and I got to make an appointment. It's like you come in, you grab a cup of coffee, you can ask some questions, you get that undivided attention. But that it's also an opportunity to bring in the nonprofits, to bring in those other businesses like yourselves, to share with the community, to share with startups, to increase that knowledge base, which we know is so important because this work is about Black businesses are driving, small viability right now, right? They're employers, they're hiring, they're buying supplies, they're driving inventory. And so how do we continue to support that network? Because we all have seen, especially in the past few days, the impact that the Black community and communities of color have. And so how do we continue to leverage that? How do we continue to partner with Capital One and different organizations and nonprofits to just broaden that base and share those tips and tricks?
And Liz, I think on y'all side, and then I'll be quiet for a second, but I think on y'all side, it's a matter of listening, right? Mm-hmm. Like really actively listening. And we all know from being in relationships, right, that listening is actually, it's a thing. You know what I mean? Like it's not a passive thing. You have to actively be listening. And I think on you guys' side, that's key. You know what I mean? So if you could just spread that through the walls, it's like, listen to these young people. They know what they're talking about. They may not say it in a way that you think they should say it, mm-hmm. but they know what they're talking about. I know that Marcus and I go out of our way to talk to our younger, and I think Gary and T kind of talked about just as far as their hiring and the young people that are part of their team. Man, these young kids, they know what's going on, man. They're not idiots at all, So we make it a point to kind of just, back to what you're saying, just listening to the community.
Definitely. And to that listening in, I think that's the ear to the ground. That's where the creativity and the ideas and that visibility is coming from. And so I think, you all have done an amazing job in that space, especially since this year has been, it's been a year. between the global pandemic, the social unrest, the election, you all have still been able to birth amazing new projects. So what's been your motivation to keep that creativity going, especially with the projects that you've kicked off that have just done so many amazing things in the community?
I'll take the kind of first pass at this one. I think even for us, when the beginning of this year, obviously, and I mentioned it before, Gary and I were tremendously excited about the possibilities of this year. This the same way we are every year, right? And it almost felt like that was just like taken from us like immediately when coronavirus came. And I imagine that every small business owner felt that exact same way. I think the thing that we were able to do was say to ourselves, if we're not going to be, raking in the dollars in this first quarter or second quarter or whatever it is, we need to do something that whenever this thing is over, we need to set ourselves and our community up in a position to be successful and hit the ground running whenever that happens. And so from there, Gray had this amazing idea of the Resilience Project. And honestly, it came from him, but it was absolutely a team effort in thinking about how can we do something that speaks to who we are as a company? How can we do something that speaks to our community as well at the same time? And how can we do something that we've never done before, right? So our foundation is a creative agency. So every single time we make a left turn or a right turn, it better be somewhere new, right? That's what our clients expect from us. That's what we expect from ourselves. So we kind of took some of that time to think, is there anything that we want to explore? Right? Is there anything that we haven't had the opportunity to do yet? Maybe we can find our own lane or create our own lane to do that. That's how, we never done a mural of that size. We never played with augmented reality before. We've never done that many interviews in that particular way and told stories the way we did. And ultimately, I think for us, it came down to we need to kind of stay sharp during this downtime and make sure that when we come out, we have a new thing to offer. And that was kind of our foundation that kept us creative, kept us excited, so that we could kind of continue to let's do this, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this. And you keep doing that enough, it'll make sense at some point in time. And when people start to understand their pivot, during coronavirus, we were right there to pick up some of those pieces and say, we have a thing. I think we can connect the dots with this particular idea, so we didn't wait for, the skies to clear. We essentially said, well, let's just get up there right now. And whenever we can see the horizon, that's where we'll decide which direction we're going to go.
Yeah. I mean, just to come off that, to your point, Corona definitely slap Mark and I clear across the beards. We started off this year, obviously, just to T's point, super excited, man. We had came with, we're just speaking about the festival. I think that we came and probably delivered one of the best, you know what I'm saying? Was going to be one of the best urban experiences in a while, just in terms of talent that we had curated, from the babies of the world to the Roddy Riches to the Meg Thee Stallions. And you got to think, Marcus and I had booked that in November of the year before. So that just goes to show where our minds are, right? So that's just a tap on the back to both of us. You got to do that to yourself. Yeah. But Corona slapped us dead in the mouth. And I think that your tummy is a very good motivational tool. You know what I mean? We knew that at the end of the day, we still had to eat. So it's, we got to keep it going. We got to figure this thing out, and we had been seeing, we actually did a digital conference, a BroccoliCon conference. So it didn't necessarily stop us. We kept going. And then Marcus and I had seen the drive-ins and things that they were doing in other places with the drive-ins. And Marcus had the idea, hey man, let's do a drive-in here, like where we would do the festival. You know what I'm saying? And we was like, all right, and we did it. So that has been super duper successful. Mark, I don't know if you want to speak on that a little bit more in detail, just in terms of the partnership, because yet again, still having those relationships with, say, the city of Washington, D.C., right? And even though we didn't do the festival, we were able to come and present this drive-in to them and they say, hey, you know, you guys are known from doing great work. Going back to Gary's point, the business acclimate. It's one thing to be so-called cool and to get it together, but can you speak? Can you send an email? Can you make a presentation, right? So Marcus and I put together a presentation, won that business. We were not the only ones who were trying to do a drive-in scenario at RFK Stadium. But we won the business through, yet again, having a history of being good businessmen, doing what we say we were going to do, executing things on time and in a timely manner. And then we were able to knock that off. So that's been great. Mark, I don't know if you got anything you want to add.
I think the other part to that was, you know, you take it for granted. You do these festivals every year and you like, oh, we promote these events, whatever. But you forget that you done became like an expert. Like, you know, every production company, you know, everything, you know, all the vendors, you know, the permit people, you know, the person to hit in the city, you know, every element that you would need to make this happen. And because of that, it quickly became like a puzzle. It was like, oh, hold on, we need what? Oh, I know who to call. Like, oh, you need what? And that just us becoming experts over the past few years at just producing and mobilizing people from just the core skill set of like, I produce events. That ultimately was the thing that allowed us to be able to win the business, because nobody in the city there was no way they could say, well, we don't know if you guys can do this. Like, are you guys going to be capable to do this? Do you have the resources to make this last? And so I think that, you know, those things of like, you know, ain't nothing wrong with being an expert, right? Like, people make a lot of money on just being experts at one thing. And I think we take, as Black people, we take for granted at being like good at one thing. You know what I mean? Like, we want to be so good at all this stuff. And it's like, are you good at one thing though? Like, can I call on you and count on you for one thing? And so, you know, this was our one thing, right? Like, you know, with all the glitz and glamour, take it all the way down. Can you produce stuff, right? Can you put something and make it happen? And we can, right? We can do that. And so I think that was like the blessing for us, because as far as we've seen, you know, our Park Up concept has been probably one of the most successful drive-in pop-up scenarios, really, maybe on the East Coast. You know, there have been some that popped in for a weekend, but for us to have, you know, probably sold over 20,000 tickets since July, man, it's incredible. You know, that's an incredible thing that I don't think they ever.
And those tickets sold fast. I was like, can I through? Right.
But it hasn't all been victories, right, Liz? You know, Marcus and I and our partner Daryl, we did have a standalone space. We had Broccoli Bar, which was a space which COVID, you know what I mean, knocked us out. So it wasn't all, you know, glamour and glitz. Marcus and I definitely had some, you know, nights on the phone like, bruh, like, you know what I mean? Let me FaceTime. You good, bruh? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's real life. So to that point, it hasn't been all glamour and glitz, but we here, you know, we on the phone with Liz right now. We talking to G right now. We at T right now. So it's a positive thing. And we're going to, and I love that y'all called y'all projects a resilient project, because that's what it is. It's resilience. And we're definitely going to keep going. So.
And so, Marcus, you talked about being an expert in one thing as a skill set to think about. What other advice do you all have for businesses that may be having difficulty pivoting in these, you know, really different times?
I mean, if this would have been pre-PPP and all of that stuff, I would have said, make sure your business is in order. You know what I mean? I think that's part one. I think that was a lesson that a lot of people kicking themselves in the ass for, because, you know, it was a lot of money on the streets and a lot of people didn't get it just because their business wasn't in line, their books wasn't together. And that sucks. You know what I mean? Like that, as a business that's struggling, and they
didn't know, Mark. You got to say that too. They didn't know, and that go back to
they
didn't even know.
They definitely didn't know. You know, and I think, you know, that part obviously sucks, but we passed that. So, you know, now what is the next thing? I mean, I think right now, like the biggest thing is to figure out, you know, it may not be your expert, but like, what are the things that your business has been successful, and let's lock in on like one or two of those things. You know, even going back to the partnerships, you know, you can kind of get pulled, a big name, a sexy name come at you. It may pull you in a direction that you may not be wanting to go, but because you feel like that's a big name, it may pull you to that side. And I think, sometimes we gotta like believe in a couple of those things, like decide on what are those scopes of work that you're gonna lock in on and kind of focus in on that stuff. I think a lot of times, and Brandon and I, we definitely been guilty of this. Somebody comes around and it feels like a good idea, man, we might just abort the direction, and we look back and be like, damn, why we even do this? This was stupid. And I just think right now, you have to be super, super critical of not wasting steps, because now it's like, man, you make a bad step right now in this climate financially, man, you be up out of here. You know what I mean? Your business is over. There's really not a lot of, I made a mistake and I'm gonna fix it over the next 6 months. Man, you make a mistake now, it could be over for you. And so I just think we gotta be very critical of what we actually do good. And even if that means we gotta ask somebody else, call an old client, call a few old clients. What was your experience? What did I not do good? What was the areas that you felt like was the real areas that you got value from working with us? Like sometimes we can't be that critical of ourselves and of our partners. We gotta, maybe call somebody and get some real opinions. Cause I do think that's a challenge. Is like, we sell a lot of services. What's the one that people keep coming to you for, really? You know what I mean?
Don't be sensitive and take that feedback.
Facts. Yeah, don't be sensitive, because it's probably not what you're gonna want to hear. It's gonna probably be the one skill set or the one service that you either hate or feel like it's not the one that makes you money.
And I'm a Cancer, so y'all know I cuss people out all the time and then may go cry or something. You feel me? So it's like, you got to get off that,
Yeah, you got to get past that initial sting to get to the benefit. And so I think that sometimes it's putting our egos to the side to really take in that feedback. Gary and Taman, what about you as far as advice for folks trying to pivot? I mean, you all did an amazing job with the mural and that partnership. So what are your thoughts there?
It's a tough time, man. It's a really tough time, and I want to be sensitive to other businesses.
Give them that real, G. Give them that real. They need to know how that scab feel when you get it.
Yeah, listen. I mean, you made a good point about having your business in order. I think initial on the upfront, it was like being able to be in a position to where you can get those PPP loans and having your business in order. But again, it goes back to knowing, and that knowledge and how to approach those things, and knowing that you need to have your business in order to get these loans. It wasn't just like, hey, I'm a Black-owned business, I need that money. Nah, you need to have tax returns. You need to have bank statements. You need to have stuff lined up so they can, so they can give you these funds, right? And so that's one thing. But I think now the biggest thing I would say is understanding the current landscape, right? Obviously, people are still in the house. We're quarantined. Nobody's really out, in these streets shopping. So where's the business? Everything's online, right? Everybody's online. So again, thinking about what's most beneficial to me in this time, and how, if I'm not an online first business, how can I pivot to be an online first business now? If I wasn't doing online marketing, how can I reallocate some of that marketing that I was doing maybe in store or whatever? How can I reallocate those dollars to online marketing dollars, right? And so really just being open to new things is big, right? And not being stuck in your ways. I think we tend to get into a routine, right? And this is how I do things. This is how it's always worked. And then when that gets shut down, sometimes we can be stuck and trying to, force things into an old way of thinking, instead of opening our minds up into, maybe some new processes or some new ideas that, again, like B said, like somebody might tell you something that you don't necessarily want to hear, or you don't think is maybe feasible, or you might say, oh, I've never done it that way before. Well, now might be a time to think about doing it that way, right? If you want to stay alive, right? So again, I think it's main thing is being open to new things, being open to new ideas, being open to criticism, constructive criticism, right? Taking that constructive criticism and turning that into, an effective business strategy. I think that's mainly how I see things, right? Because everybody's facing a different challenge, and everybody doesn't have the the wherewithal to kind of assess the situation and make that pivot. But the more you can be open, the more you can allow things, new ideas, new energy, new people to come in and kind of give you advice, or at least maybe show you a new direction that potentially could help you out is best, right? So staying open, staying positive and optimistic, and really surveying the landscape, seeing what's happening, knowing that everybody's online now. How can you really position yourself to show up better in that space? That I think, if that makes sense. I know I was rambling, but for me, it's just about staying open and to new ideas and new ways.
Hey, G, can I ask you a question real quick?
Yeah.
How is as this is starting to transition for y'all, how is the positioning of an agency like yourself bidding for bigger business, large corporate companies who are now looking for, more urban driven messaging? And, does it ultimately become where the larger agencies now just hire a bunch of Black people or people of color to come in and stay staff up and they'll bid on those contracts? Or are the bigger companies understanding you guys' value as a agency that was created as an expert in the multicultural space?
Tamon could probably answer this better, but I would definitely say it's the latter. I think they're understanding, they're recognizing our value that we bring. And that's, again, because we're 5 years in, but I think even the work that we've done through this 5 years has solidified us and established us in this space as a leader in this space, as someone, a company that is doing good work, that is doing the right work, and that is doing it at a very high level. Even I think we're at like 14 total employees right now. But we've been very fortunate to win some extremely large business with these amazing Fortune 500 companies because of the work we've done and the work we put in. So it's more about the value that we're bringing, the work ethic that we've, kind of established from jump. But I think Tamon he leads kind of our business strategy. He could probably speak to it a little bit better than I could.
No, I think that answer is right. There are a number of different advantages with going with, working with some of the biggest agencies in the world, right? There are unlimited budgets. They can basically do anything. They can hire anybody at any time to work on any specific thing. But what I really think is happening is that the same way we as an audience are holding big brands accountable, we're following the dollars more than we ever have before, right? Like in previous years, people will be happy with, representation and, look at the partnership and da-da-da-da. Like right now, especially this year, 2020, you got to follow the dollars. Like that's the ultimate level of satisfaction from people of color and any community of color as well. And so in terms of following the dollars, that now gets translated into who are you partnering with? Who are your agencies? Who is the thought behind that, right? And, it does go back to when when Beyonce was trying to work with whoever and when they were following the dollars and the dollars ended up being white dollars, but it's coming from Beyonce, right? So, what we like to think about is, yes, we've built a great foundation of work over the last 5 years. But we want the people that we work with to be able to trace those dollars back, yes, to us, but also us to our community, right? And so there's just like this constant value add in working with Creative Theory. Yes, we're a Black-owned company. Yes, we do so much in our community. So like the whole thing kind of comes full circle, and we like to keep all of our dollars in our community. And so when you think of it from that perspective, it becomes even more clear, right? And it's just the fabric of who we are. And big companies, you know, they can't compete with that. That's not who they are. It's not what they exist to do, right? So it's almost like, you know, it's a completely different, you know, value proposition that they have than what we have.
Y'all so nimble. You can move around. Like, man, that's what's up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great question. And so as we think about, you know, you all are celebrating, you know, your 5-year anniversary. I know Broccoli City, you have several years in the game as well. So what are you all most proud of in your careers, and what advice do you give to those young entrepreneurs coming up?
Who do I go
Don't
first?
stop. Keep going. Right? You know what I mean? And then it's, you know, that I know that sounds very generic, very cliche, but it's real. You know what I mean? Keep it going. And I guess what I would tell a younger Marcus and I is kind of the basis of this whole conversation, which is educate yourself. I think that we hopped into a lot of things feet first off of that. And I'm really not a fan of this word no more. And I said it earlier, but like that cool shit, you know, I'm not a fan of that no more. You know what I mean? Like, get educated, like know what you're doing. Like, don't just be, I mean, I guess that's cool, the kind of that initial, but like do the research, educate yourself, you know what I mean? Educate the people around you. And of course, don't stop, you know, don't stop, keep it, you know, and don't compare either. Don't be comparing yourself to none of these people out here. You know what I mean? You run your own race. And that'd be my tip points, I think, my points.
Yeah. I think, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say to your question about what are you most proud of? I think for me, and I probably to mine can attest to this as well, but I think when we step back and look at what we've built as Creative Theory Agency, and we look at our team members, and we see Black folks succeeding, smart, Black, creative people that we've been able to support, write checks to, you know, give opportunities to, that to me is the most rewarding thing, I think, you know, because so many times we've been in spaces where the rooms don't look like us, you know, and for us to have created a room, so to speak, or a table, and have brought our community to this table to eat as well, that is, for me, probably the thing that gets me up every day and that pushes me, because I want not only continue to feed myself and my family, but knowing that I have a whole team of people that look like me, that I believe in, that I want to eat as well, and I want their families to eat as well, is just probably the most proud thing that I can think of.
Yeah, no, I echo that. I love paying people. You know what I'm saying? I love being able to pay people for services. I love paying people ahead of time. I love having people not be able to say nothing about nothing that we ain't paid. I love that. I love people being able to say, I love working with Broccoli City because they pay. You know what I mean? Because that's something that's not something that you hear a lot of times when people describe Black businesses and that sort of thing. And so I think that's something that's super important. And I think the other thing that I personally have been proud of is that it's great to live good and it be because of things that you do on a daily basis. You know what I mean? And so I appreciate being able to not have our lifestyle compromised because we're entrepreneurs, because for so many years, Brennan and I, and I'm sure Gary and T, y'all sacrificed so much where you personally had to sacrifice as leaders of an entrepreneur or of a business, where those individuals that work for you still had to be paid, right? They still needed to have their checks on time, where those internal checks wasn't even coming at all. And so to still be able to pay those individuals and be able to maintain a lifestyle, be fly, look good, have some savings, have a little boy sitting in your lap, he looking good with his Adidas tracksuit. You know what I mean? Like that's a beautiful, beautiful thing to be able to still maintain that lifestyle and do it from something that you own, that you created, man. Like it's just really genuinely not a better feeling. Even though it'd be terrible times, it just, once it does come together, it just isn't a better feeling than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really don't have too much to add. I think these were probably the perfect answers. We're all in, similar phases of business and similar phases of life, it seems as well. I think the one thing that really stands out to me in terms of like the journey from where we started to where inevitably we're going to continue to grow is really starting to understand and appreciate what true leadership is. And I think the farther we get in business, the you really start to realize how that can affect life. It can affect life. It can affect livelihoods. It can affect your business, right? And I think we've just, Gary and I have been able to make a really strong foundation in terms of where we see our company going, and what we stand for, where our bar is, and how we as leaders set that bar. I personally, I went to business school, so your management, leadership, all these types of things, but you really don't understand that until you have to set the tone for 13 other people at your company, because that's you're the lighthouse, right? And that means a lot, and it's a special responsibility that I don't take lightly, that I appreciate every day.
Yeah, and I would just like to thank all of you because, kind of Taman, to your point, my nephew was thinking about, starting his own business, and I shared with him actually your websites and your stories, and you all were that lighthouse. And he was like, "Oh my gosh, this is so cool!" Especially as a Black man, a young Black man, to see, folks out there doing it, setting the example. So, kudos to you all, to your teams. You're doing amazing work, and you are in fact the lighthouse and the beacon. So, please just keep doing your thing, keep sharing. And again, just thank you so much, because you are doing fantastic things.
And we appreciate you, Liz.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you all for taking the time. It's been an amazing conversation. Really appreciate it. And look forward to seeing what you all have in those creative minds and what comes out.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.